Hey, this is Ricky Kearney, Cichlids, and today we're going to look at what I've learned from my fish. What you learn from your fish is the most important thing you can do in this hobby. Others you can learn from are books, research, anything on the internet, but learning from your fish is the most important. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've learned from my fish recently, the Frontosas behind me, the Frontosa colony. Now the Frontosas back here for a while were only eating once per day. When I put food in there the second time, they really weren't eating it. I'd have to take it out, and it was kind of hard because it was the sinking pellet, which I agreed that was probably the best thing to feed them. But once the fish food sinks to the bottom, it's real hard to take out the excess food if they don't eat it. But I don't have that problem now. So I observed them and I thought, hey, something's up. What's going on? So I realized that the water quality was not as good as some of my other aquariums because they weren't having the same issues. So I've changed the filtration to sponge filters, 2 sponge filters and a fluidized bed filter. And then I changed the food. Now I did not purposely change to a floating pellet. I thought this color pellet was a sinking pellet, but it was a blessing in disguise, because hey, now the pellet's floating, and any excess food that is not eaten I can take out with no problems with a net. But there's not that issue anymore. Now I'm feeding these Frontosas twice a day, and so that means they're growing twice as fast. Now you can't overfeed your fish, but I'm not overfeeding them. I'm watching the bellies. You don't want them to get their bellies real big because you can't overfeed them. But Frontosas do have more of a control than some of your other African cichlids. They don't gorge themselves like some of the Malawi cichlids. They can practically explode with how much food they eat. But you still have to watch how you feed your Frontosas. So as I was feeding my Frontosas, I'm thinking, wow, the colors are really coming out, the water quality is coming out. It's just amazing. And what I learned was, hey, I learned something from my fish. Observing them, I saw that they were not eating as much as they should. I changed the filtration, I changed the food, and let's look at some of those results. And I'll also show you how they eat. It's you can't be boring. You see a lot of feeding videos, but if you've seen my feeding videos in the past, you saw them eating sinking pellets, and this time you'll see them eating floating pellets and see the difference. So check out this video and see what you can learn from your fish. One thing I've learned about these fish, about feeding them, is they sure act like they want food, where before I would put sinking pellets in, and it would take them a few minutes to react to go for the food, and sometimes they weren't real fast at going for the food. Sometimes it could take quite a while for them to get interested in the food. But now that they're eating floating pellets, you see the reactions to them. When I come to the aquarium, they start getting active. There's more activity. They come towards the front. It's kind of exciting. It's always a good thing that you want to look for when you're observing your fish. How are they acting when you come to the aquarium? Now they can fool you. Cichlids can fool you, African cichlids. They can act like they want to eat and go crazy at the top of the aquarium, and then not eat any of your food, which can be bad. So you have to be careful how much food you put in at one time. But beforehand, these Frontosas weren't acting like they wanted any food. So now they do. Right now they're kind of being a little active, staying up front. I'll show how they act when I've actually put the food in here in just a minute. So I want you to see the coloration difference from the last video. The whites are really more intense. I don't think this is the full potential. You see a little bit of damage there. There's been some fighting. This cichlid here right there has been tore up. Now, I may just hit a cave, but I think there's a little bit of fighting involved. But the coloration, I think, has not reached its peak on these Frontosas. I think it's in a development stage, and then it will get better and better with time. Now some people talking about how they cycle their tank within 30 days, and then you get some of the more long-term hobbyists that say, hey, a good setup tank has been set up for 6 to 8 months. So realize that there's steps. Yes, you can get it cycled in 30 days, but you may have to do smaller water changes for a while, or maybe have to do bigger water changes for a while, just depending on your situation. Because there will be could be less bacteria, good but beneficial bacteria in there until it's been set up for 6 to 8 months. You see on this Frontosa here, there's some, the other side, a little bit of fighting. You saw them there a little with the females there fighting. On the other side is a little bit of damage. So there is some fighting. I was thinking about taking out, I have a second male, which right now is in this cave here. Can't really see him. So I'm kind of thinking about whether I should take the male out or not. So that's one of the things I'm observing, whether it will make a difference to take out the second male or just leave it with 2 males in this Frontosa colony. Mostly in my breeding experiences in the past has been with just 1 male and 1 female. So the colony is kind of new to me. So let's get to the feeding and check that out. I had to do that at the end because, hey, once you feed, the water quality gets a little bit messed up, and you don't really want to continue your video when that happens. Now check out Changer. She's been looking really good. A lot of whites coming out of her, looking really good. She's putting a little bit of size. I'd like her to grow a little bit faster, but you know, you can't really push. Just like kids, you don't want them to grow too fast, but you also don't want them just to stay small forever. So let's look at the feeding. Let's go to that. Alright, I'm about to put in the floating pellets. Let's see how they'll react with me being so close to the aquarium with the camera. Yeah, they're already going for it. So that's good. Let me back up a little bit so you see how they eat. And look at them just going for it there. Now a good thing about floating pellets, which in the past I told you I liked the sinking pellets, but I've changed. You know, I'm a man. I can change. I can admit that the floating pellets have turned out to be better for the Frontosas than sinking pellets. The good thing about the floating pellets is, hey, sometimes you get a little bit careless when you're putting your food in, or maybe not just careless. Sometimes more food comes out that you did not intend to go into the aquarium. The Frontosas could be eating great. As you see here, they're just really tearing it up. They could be eating great, but you still put a little bit too much in there. If it's a floating pellet, you can get your net in there and get out that excess food, and then there won't be any issues. Because you know, if you leave your excess food in there, you're causing the problems with your filtration and your water quality. You're doing something you shouldn't be doing. So with a floating pellet, you don't have that issue. So if your kid or yourself dumps too much food in there, a floating pellet can help you with those issues. Now they usually eat most of the food all at once because they're kind of a frenzy, and then I observe them. I look to see if I should put any more in there, but see, I'm feeding them twice, so I don't necessarily have to do as much as possible the first feeding, because I'm going to be feeding them again in the afternoons. So they go like crazy at first, and then the pellets that are left are kind of spread out, so they got to spot them. If you look, all the Frontosas are going to the top. It's really great. And also, I really think this helps with them being less skittish, because it took a while for them to get to where they were eating like this. They were used to eating off the bottom. Now they're used to eating off the top of the water. So I think they're less skittish this way. So remember, learn from your fish, have fun, and just keep on enjoying this hobby. It's an exciting thing, and also just because you're doing something one way, don't be afraid to admit, to change something that you're doing with the hobby. You know, I've been doing this hobby for you know, longer than you can imagine, and I still have things to learn. There's things I've done in the past that I quit doing that I realized were the right thing to do, and listen to people and change to something that wasn't the right way to do. So be willing to change, but listen, the most important thing is to learn from your fish, and that's what this video is about, learning from your fish. Thanks for watching Ricky Kennerly Cichlids, and look around the screen for more videos from Ricky Kennerly Cichlids.